I'm Dario Bar with Global Pulse Confederation. Today I'm speaking with Georgie Aley, the new chair of Pulse Australia. Georgie has more than 15 years of experience in the food and agribusiness sector, both in Australia and international. In 2014, the Australian Financial Review named her one of Australia's 100 women of influence. In addition to becoming Pulse Australia's chair in October, she is presently Director of Food and Agribusiness at KPMG Australia. Georgie, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Dario. Really pleased to be here.
Great. To begin with, Georgie, tell us a little bit about yourself, both your personal and professional backgrounds.
So as you said in your introduction, Dario, I've been working in the Australian food and agribusiness sector for over 15 years now, and that has extended internationally. So working with both, producers and growers in Australia, as well as internationally, right through to food manufacturing, processing, and of course the trade, both in my roles in grain-specific areas of the food and agri sector, and of course in health and nutrition and food manufacturing, and in my role at KPMG more broadly. So that's, I guess, a little bit about the professional side. Outside of that, I live in Sydney, Australia, probably one of the best cities, if not the best city in the world, which is interesting when you talk to international colleagues such as yourself. But I come from down under in Australia, and I think we're very fortunate to live in this part of the world and be so globally connected. And so someone who normally would love travel, getting overseas at least once every year, it's been, challenging and testing times in 2020, but I'm a born and bred Australian. I grew up in Sydney and evolved, my interest and engagement with the sector in my sort of later stage of school and career and study, and have set up my life here in Sydney, having the opportunity to work, locally and globally.
Well, great. Well, tell us a little bit at the beginning, Georgie, a little bit of how you got your start in the Pulse business.
Yeah, sure, Darius. So my background is, I guess, more in the ag economics, ag business side of things. So as I said, I was a Sydney girl living in Sydney with no sort of country affinity or an interaction. However, had a strong pull towards studying a degree that was based in rural business and rural business management, and as a result, undertook my undergrad and bachelor's studies in that area. And I spent a lot of time as a result of that, Dario, based in regional Australia. I spent about 5 years, about sort of 3 hours west of Sydney. And, from there was exposed to, farming, regional communities, and the opportunities that exist in this sector. And as a result, upon graduating from uni, I ended up working for Australia's largest grower organisation. So we had 18,000 grain farmers all across Australia. We were very engaged in our large bulk handling companies here in Australia, and one of which that organisation and those growers had started some, 50, 60, probably 70 years ago now. And as a result, I used to spend my days, on farm, working with farmers around adoption of new varieties, looking at challenges in the supply chain, export markets, and business management. How are they running their businesses as farming operations? And as a result, had the opportunity to get great exposure to the pulse industry as part of that. Following that time, I went and ran what is the Grains and Legumes Nutrition Council. And I think, Dario, that's where I probably elevated and had a stronger focus on pulses. Very fortunate to work very closely with our colleagues in Pulse Canada, and of course the US dry pea and lentil. And that was probably my first exposure to the GPC community more broadly. And then in the lead up, of course, to the International Year of Pulses, I got very involved and was fortunate to chair one of our global committees around creating awareness as part of the International Year of Pulses, and also sort of led our national committee here out of Australia with the Pulse Australia community and our industry in Australia. So, I've got a great passion both from consumer demand, drive for, adoption and incorporation of pulses into diets more broadly, both from, a whole pulse perspective as much as fractions and incorporation into processed and more manufactured goods, right down to a strong and robust trade. And of course, how our growers maximise production and value. And Australia continues to hold its position as a wonderful producer and supplier of high quality, high value pulses to many customers around the world.
Great. And tell us a little about the where you are today. Give us an overview of KPMG, if you could, and tell us about your role there as a director for food and agribusiness.
Sure. So KPMG Australia, should be to some a household name. We're one of the big four consulting firms based globally. So we've got 153 firm countries across the world, of which Australia is one. In Australia, we employ just under 10,000 employees, and we work right across sort of, audit through to deals, tax, legal, and of course into the consulting side. So where I sit in the business is in our food and agribusiness specialist practice. So we have a team, we work across the whole business, and we support clients essentially from paddock to plate. So everything from production right through to retail and processing, transport, logistics in between. That also extends out into government, whether that be local government, state government, or federal government in Australia, and how we can really assist those government departments that have a focus on growing, supporting, enabling the sector, and making sure we've got the right sort of policy and infrastructure instruments in place to support that. So I'm very fortunate to work on a range of businesses every day, either looking to help them grow their export markets, looking at reviews of their supply chains and how they can take costs out, adopting digital is a big one, sustainability strategies, so really around growth and operations to really help the Australian food and agri sector thrive not only domestically, but also how we play on that global stage.
And last year, our president, Cindy Brown, became the first woman to lead the GPC. And I understand you're also the first woman to become chair of Post Australia. And can you reflect on what it has been like as a woman to work in Australia's ag sector?
Look, I think firstly to that, I would like to, put on record my congratulations to Cindy. And I had the opportunity of working very closely with her, both in my time at GLNC, or Grains and Legumes Nutrition Council, and Pulse Australia, and through the International Year of Pulses. So well done, Cindy. And it's great to see you at the helm of GPC. And I look forward to continuing to work with you in my role at Pulse Australia. But yes, as you said, Dario, first female to be the chair of Pulse Australia. And look, it's an interesting one. I mean, I've been in this sector now, as you said, for nearly 2 decades. To me, gender's never been a challenge or an issue in my experience, and that's notwithstanding the challenges of others. I think we're very fortunate when we take a stronger whole of value chain view in this space and look, from the production up into the food, that we have quite strong representation of women and quite a balanced view of that. So when I look at the total of the industry, I think, strong and growing female representation, and it's wonderful to hopefully be a role model and an example for many young women coming into our sector, but also to recognise, many of our leaders, such as Cindy herself, and others that have led organisations, not just in Australia, but globally, and, continue to advance the sector overall, I think, is our focus.
And Georgie, as the new chair of Pulse Australia, what do you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges for the country's pulse sector?
Look, we've got a range of opportunities, and I think a lot of those opportunities extend to some of those global trends. I think it's a wonderful time that we've seen in the last, really 3 years, but accelerated in the last 5 years, around a strong focus on protein and the opportunity to look beyond animal protein to plant-based proteins. And I think as a pulse industry in Australia, we're very focused on how we ensure Australia captures part of that value and that opportunity to be a supplier into that alternative protein and plant protein market and support the growth of that opportunity. And I think, challenging front for us, Dario, we're a country that's exposed to drought. We came into, or we've come off the back of some extensive and prolonged droughts up until sort of late last year. We've experienced great rains this year, which has seen, many farmers put a lot of crop in the ground, and we're starting to yield and see some of that return as we look into this year's harvest, and have got underway with this year's harvest. So, we've got great ability to produce, notwithstanding our production challenges. And so we still continue to look at ways that we can grow new varieties, deal with some of those climatic challenges. But then, as we move down the supply chain, trade tensions for everybody right now is, I think, front of mind for anybody trying to move any commodity around the globe. And I think the coronavirus has heightened that challenge. And in our part of the world, we've got some closer trade tensions to our local shores. So market access, continued access to those markets, access to freight in a challenging time period like COVID, remain front and centre challenges for the sector. But I don't doubt that, our strong ties with our export markets, our key customers around the world, will continue to put Australia in good stead as we realise those opportunities of a great year of production.
Well, you mentioned the harvest, and I wonder if we could talk a little bit about how that's coming along. And if you could give us a rundown of production and maybe the market outlook for each of the big four.
Yeah, sure. So, look, I made some notes as well, because, you never want to be quoting anything that's not correct. But look, I think overall, we've had, as I said, a strong planting coming into this harvest. Some late rains at the end of 2019 and some good summer rain coming into the planting season for 21 was excellent. I think farmers went into this year with a lot of confidence off the back of prolonged drought and looking to get a good harvest for this year, and it's been strong. We had good spring rains. We've still got some challenges at the moment across the board, regardless of what crop you're growing, of some harvest rains that's causing some delays and has caused some sort of late season challenges for some of our crops. But overall, the outlook's strong. Yields are good. Prices have remained, across our sort of four major crops, not too bad. We've had some softening around sort of chickpeas globally in terms of some of the tariff outlook going into India. But of course, we've had some demand drop, as we've seen across sort of Pakistan and Bangladesh. Faba beans, challenging start. They've probably suffered the most out of the late season rains. A little bit of challenge on that front, impacting yields. Quality still remaining good. But we're seeing some of that sort of, I guess, domestic demand pick up some of those, sort of more feed grade faba beans coming through. But freight's been a challenge for us on the faba bean front, Dario, and I think will continue to be, particularly as harvest for us continues to move south. Lentils, again, like chickpeas, strong. Very strong demand in India still, which is wonderful, and good demand still across sort of Bangladesh and sort of Egypt more broadly. We have seen some rain delays with lentils as well, but again, as we start to really ramp up the further southern states, I think we'll see some good pickup there. But quality is good again across the board on the lentil front, and prices remain wonderful, which is good. And lastly, sort of mung beans being our other major one. Again, good, prices strong. Manufacturing demands probably kept up a lot of the consumption on that front, which is great to see. So we're sort of coming to the end of the Queensland harvest in the next few weeks, and I think you'd say we've had a good year on the mung bean front, and of course local prices have been wonderful in that regard as well. So look, we're hoping for a strong end to the season. We're sitting in an El Niño year in Australia, which always causes some concerns around summer rain and harvest rains. But it's great to see some positivity and momentum and confidence in the market as we're getting the crop off. But I think into the new year, the challenge will be moving it and making sure we've got the freight, we're getting it into the markets. And of course, nice to see, hopefully, those prices remain, fairly strong and consistent as we come into the new year.
And Australia is part of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the biggest trade agreement in history. Could you tell us what that means for the country's pulse industry?
Look, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, what is it, 10 years in the making, I think, in terms of getting this partnership over the line. As a pulse industry, we welcome any trade and economic partnership arrangement. You know, we had a wonderful India-Australia economic partnership agreement come into play end of last year and earlier this year, which only goes to strengthen, you know, ties with some of our key customer and key markets. And I think we'll see the same thing around the regional comprehensive economic partnership. Great for us in the region, more specifically some of our key Asian countries and key trading partners within the Asia Pacific region in particular. So, you know, for us, strengthening economic ties, strengthening trade ties is only a positive benefit for the pulse industry. And given, you know, my earlier comment around some of the key trade tensions, the more markets with strong market access and strong demand for Australia pulses, the better as far as we're concerned. So, you know, pleased to see our government flying the flag and pleased to see Australia, you know, at the table as part of that partnership signing.
And Georgie, and closely, let's talk about something you already mentioned, which is the plant-based protein market and the phenomenal growth it's been seeing. Is that creating opportunities in Australia in terms of demand for pulse ingredients internationally and at home? Are you seeing those kind of products having success there in Australia?
Yes, we are seeing an acceleration around, you know, product opportunities in this space. And, you know, I think looking back over that trend more broadly, we've seen it accelerate a lot, as I said earlier, in the last sort of 3 years. It's been accelerating in the last 5. It was a key theme coming into the International Year of Pulses. And of course, our colleagues in Canada and the US have been very advanced and progressive in driving, you know, a lot of research and insights in that space. Closer to home for us, I think we're starting to follow that US and North American trend a lot more, and that's really accelerated in the last 12 months. Our plant-based and alternative proteins markets very much starting to normalise. We've got a lot of activity in the retail, in the quick service space of new products coming to market, and quite strong accelerated growth from the consumer demand side. And positive feedback, I think, from the market around the product and really starting to incorporate, you know, increased plant-based products in consumers' diets. For us, though, still, I think as a pulse community, not just in Australia but globally, still some of the challenges around the processing aspects and how we get the taste, how we get the functionality, how we get the efficacy of the product to ensure that, you know, consumer experience is at the level they expect and also that we want to deliver to the market. But I think the outlook's strong, and I think, you know, as venture capital funding, private equity coming to the sector, the movement in multinational food companies to start to diversify and grow R&D in this space is only a positive thing for the pulse sector to really, you know, ride home on that trend we all know has been coming for the industry for, you know, at least the last 5, if not 10 years.
Great. Well, it sounds like you're coming into Pulse Australia at an exciting time. Georgie, on behalf of the GPC, I congratulate you on your new position with Pulse Australia. We look forward to working with you, and we wish you well.
Thank you very much, Dario.
Thank you for your time today.